this computer. Okay, it's recording, and I'm going to share the screen as well, just so we've got it there. Okay, cool. So Wylan, I've had a read of your review. I think it's fantastic. I really, really enjoyed what you've written about your trip to the National Gallery. I just wanted to have a quick chat about your experience and you know, what you did and what you got from it. So I know you've already written it in your review, but could you just explain where you went and what you did and what you saw first, and then we can have a quick chat about it.
Well, I went to National Gallery and into the big section, I guess, of the National Gallery. And I saw some of Van Gogh's paintings, and Paul Cézanne. And these are like the famous ones, but I saw some new ones as well. Great. That kind of caught my eye. Including like Camila Pizarro.
Yeah. There, had you seen anything like this before? Have you been to, well, firstly, have you been to the National Gallery before, and have you seen any kind of famous old paintings before?
Yeah, I've been to Tate Modern. I've seen some new ones, and I've seen some Picasso ones, but I've never seen like a big gallery dedicated to these like famous paintings, I guess.
What did you think when you went into the National Gallery, like as a building and as a place? What impact did it have on you? Did you enjoy the experience? Was it something different? Was it, you know?
Yeah, it was definitely different because the paintings there were like really diverse and different, I guess, and there were like a huge variety of them.
It's quite impressive, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's quite, I think when I always go to places like the National Gallery or kind of any famous sort of more regal exhibition setting, you've always got, I can see you in this picture here, you've got the sort of the distance between the audience and the painting itself. Do you know what I mean? There's always a kind of, there's quite, although you're able to see them quite up close, there's an element of grandeur about it, isn't there? That's like really important paintings, and also the building is quite impressive. It's very, very grand, which it kind of adds to the experience, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So you mentioned Van Gogh and Paul Cézanne. They're like two of my favourite artists, actually. I'm going to scroll down to some of their paintings. So what did you notice about their paintings? What did you get from their technique?
Well, I'd kind of seen some of Van Gogh's paintings online, but it was nice seeing them in person, and his brush strokes were really noticeable, like looking at it in person, I guess.
Yeah, it's lovely when you can see a painting up close, isn't it? And actually imagine the painter brushing on and choosing the colours, and the texture becomes so much more real, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I always think that the frames with these ones are so ridiculous, aren't they? The frames are almost, you know, more impressive than the painting itself.
Yeah.
So let's have a look. So you did, yes, Van Gogh's chair. So these are really kind of iconic, aren't they?
Yeah, I think Van Gogh's chair is the most famous, I think. Yeah.
One of the most famous. Well, I think actually the sunflowers. Yeah. Sunflowers is probably the most famous, and then you've probably got the chair.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about Van Gogh's life?
Oh, I know it was like a tragedy.
What was the tragedy?
He cut his hair off or something.
Yeah. That's the old age thing about him, isn't it? I think he was quite tortured, a tortured artist, and he was one of those artists that didn't become famous until he died.
Yeah.
Which is quite often the way with a lot of the older artists. It's quite interesting. So we've got Cézanne's Bathers here. That's a fantastic one. Talk about colour, couldn't we, with this? Because what do you notice about the colours with all of these?
Well, I think with the large bathers, I guess the color palette is pretty grim and miserable. It's really like it's really dull, but to an effect, I guess.
Yeah, it's dull, but you've got some really deep blues in there, and it's quite moody, isn't it? He created a lot of mood with the texture and the colour that he's applied. Do you know what? It's not a test, but do you know what movement this art movement this is? Do you know anything about?
I'm not
Art?
sure. I think it was like bathers or something. Or,
As in. So when I say art movement, so like like the period of art. So you've got like Renaissance. You've got,
I know it was like I think it was 1800s, between 1800 and 1900.
Yeah.
I think.
And
yeah.
also, it's a thing called impressionism. So like loads of and it's not, I've forgotten that as well. It's loads of painters at the time that were basically trying to kind of look outside and observe real life, but paint it in quite an impressionistic way, rather than a realistic way. So it was like the movement of sort of applying colour really kind of abstractly and quite blocky to create an illusion of reality, which is why it was so kind of, it was quite controversial at the time, actually. People were like, what is this? Like, we're used to seeing things that look like photographs, and now we've got this kind of really kind of abstract looking, wishy-washy, very, and sort of, can you see the perspective isn't quite right either? It's not like really,
it's not. They're all like all over the place.
Yeah, they're all over the place. They're all kind of wonky.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a way of going against what the previous the previous artists were doing, which was really trying to replicate exactly what they saw in front of them, which they didn't always do, actually, and try and kind of really break the mold and create something that was quite avant-garde. And obviously now when we look at this, we think, well, that's actually not very avant-garde. There's people doing other things. And actually today we've gone back to the really realistic painting. A lot of sort of contemporary modern painters are looking really, really at the fine detail again. And kind of, so it's come back around circle. Anyway, enough of that. I really like that one. That's great. You were saying, what do you think could have been done better about this exhibition? You were saying.
I said, I think the painting should have been, I guess, should have fitted in more, or just like should have been similar styles, because sometimes in the room you can see like really contrasting styles in the paintings, and that's just, I think that's kind of, I don't know, it doesn't seem right, I guess.
Yeah, it's quite confusing sometimes when they put things that's all in one room and they don't quite show the links between them. So like in terms of curation, do you know much about what a curator would do in an exhibition like this? Do you know anything about curation or?
Nothing.
But you know that so a curator is in charge of placing where the paintings go, where the artworks go.
Right.
And then
they've got professional for that.
Yeah, they've got a lot of professionals for that. So you'd have a lead curator at the Tate, for example, that would oversee the whole of the Tate's exhibition. Then you would have individual curators for each temporary exhibition that was happening, and then you'd have assistant curators, and then you'd have people that install the work as well. So actually someone has thought about they've made a decision as to which paintings go in which room. And also, I don't know if you know or noticed, there was lots of, so for instance, with this one, there's a little piece of writing next to it.
Yeah, I noticed that,
So what do you think about that? What's the intention of that writing? What's the purpose?
It's just like, it gives you a basic overview of the painting.
Yeah.
And I guess the historical nature of it.
Yeah.
Just like a brief introduction, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Which is actually quite useful, isn't it? Because if you didn't have that there, you'd be a bit lost. You'd be like, well, who's made this, and what's it about? You know,
Yeah.
you'd be even more lost than you were beforehand. So actually, that's a curator's job, is to think about the context in which the paintings are placed, and give the viewer a little bit of information about that piece of work. And usually each room, I don't know whether you noticed when you go into a room, it's usually ordered thematically or chronologically. So you'd start off at the beginning of Van Gogh's life, or you'd
Yeah.
start off,
Oh, that's kind of
this,
cool.
or this room is just is all the Impressionists, and they're all grouped together. Or this room is
Yeah.
all about darkness, and the other room is all about lightness. So they're usually grouped within a theme, to kind of make it a bit easier. But I know what you mean. When a curation's done bad, it can be
Yeah.
really confusing and really kind of it doesn't make sense, or it can be distracting, or it doesn't have a good flow.
Yeah.
Sometimes the lighting can be really really affect the way you see paintings. I don't know if you noticed, was it quite easy to move around? Was it bright and airy, or was it full of people when you went?
Yeah. It was quite light, but at the same time, you wouldn't really notice it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I didn't see it reflect off the paintings or anything. So I
Yeah,
think the lighting was fine. Yeah.
sometimes that can affect the way you
Yeah.
see things. So, and overall, would you recommend going to the National Gallery to your friends or your family?
Yeah. Probably at least once in your life, because it's nice to see such a famous artist's painting
Mm,
in such a large area, I guess.
definitely.
Yeah. And it's nice. I think it's a good introduction to like paintings and art in general.
Definitely, yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
And we've got it on our doorstep. We're very lucky to live in London, to be able to
Oh
go to
yeah.
these places. Not at the moment because of COVID. But
Yeah. Yeah.
when it's all back up and running again, we'll realise we've taken it all for granted for so long, haven't we?
Yeah.
We're not able at the moment to step through the doors, but I suppose when we're back to normal, we can. Brilliant. Well done. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it's a fantastic review, and I'm really glad that you went and did that. I think it's a great experience you've had.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing it. I'm gonna stop recording.
Yeah. It's cool.
Stop share and stop recording.